once I was rejected from a job because they said that me praying 5 times a day was too much. You call yourself a Muslim charity. I had comments about my beard being too long, which,
Wait.
doesn't...
So, to be clear,
Yeah.
Muslim charity said that praying 5 times a day and having a long beard is bad, or am I understanding wrong?
No, they told me that...
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my good brothers and sisters. Today we've got a very special guest. This is Dr. William Barylo. He's a Polish revert. I believe he grew up in France. Yep. He's a Polish revert, grew up in France, and he's a sociologist at the University of Warwick, and he does some other stuff. Drone pilot, motorsports enthusiast, I'm not sure what that is. Cool guy, yeah? Smart guy. He's a doctor, so you know what he's saying is probably important. Would you like to introduce yourself in whatever you want to say about yourself?
Well, I think you did the main job, so not sure what I can add.
You've got a very nice YouTube channel, I have to say. Very nice. Nice thumbnails, nice titles, engaging videos. But yeah, today we're just going to be talking about cultural issues and general issues surrounding becoming a revert, and also, we're gonna go over tips. We're mostly gonna talk about like cultural stuff and like societal stuff because, of course, Dr. Barylo is a sociologist, so that's his specialty. So my first question to you is, what were some cultural issues that you faced as a revert, and what are some that you've noticed in general?
So just for the context, I've embraced Islam while in France, and I spent 5 years as a Muslim in France before moving to the UK. And in France, I remember not having any issues when it comes to cultural stuff. It all came all of a sudden when I came to the UK. And it was quite hard because I was just coming out of a divorce, and a few years later, I was trying to get married, and I was trying to get jobs as well. And because I embraced Islam, my intuition was, let me put my skills to the service of Muslims, of the Ummah, let's to say. So I was looking at the charity sector. And the first thing that really puzzled me is I was getting rejected from jobs and from marriage, not because I was lacking any skills or because, of my religious practice or anything, or to some extent, but mainly because my parents are Polish. And it was a shock for me because I didn't know that you had such a big sentiment and stereotypes for Polish people. Because me, despite having a PhD, some people told me that, oh, what are you doing here? How can you be Muslim? You're one of these dirty immigrants who just build a dodgy driveway and run away with the money. So how does it even make sense? I've learned that, it's not only about my cultural background, but also it has a lot to do with economic and social status. And this is something I've also observed with some of my friends who are new Muslims, especially those who are, let's say, black new Muslims, who have a very, very, very hard time in the British Muslim community. And, it runs really deep. So most of my research work was trying to understand, why do people think like that? Because, in Islam, there shouldn't be any divisions according to your ethnicity, your culture, how much you earn, and so on and so on. But seeing Muslims who are relatively practicing, pray their 5 prayers, fast during Ramadan, pray their Hajj, everything, I was assuming wrongly, I was very naive, I was very young at that time. I was assuming, people would go beyond all these divisions, but it's the complete opposite because, well, at the end of the day, humans are humans.
That's really interesting what you said about things you face just because you're Polish. Like, in my experience, like, I know people say, oh, you're a job stealer and whatnot, but I've never actually seen that firsthand. I never knew it was an actual issue. But did you never face anything for being Muslim in France? Because I know that in France there's a large amount of Islamophobia, right?
Indeed, but the thing is, because I'm white and people, when they see me, even if I have a beard, they assume that, I'm just one of them when it comes to white French people, non-Muslims. So that helps a lot. I think if I was, let's say, a woman, because I know some friends in France who are white French women who have embraced Islam and started to wear the hijab. So they would encounter lots of problems in society with finding jobs and like in every aspect of life. So that's just how things work.
That must really suck for them. So well, we should pray that Allah makes it easier for them, of course, and that they don't face that many challenges. But so, what exactly did you study at university? Because I know sociology, right? But what exactly?
So it starts in France, and I started my sociology study in 2009. So for the context, it was when France was in the middle of all these conversations around the hijab, around prayers in the street, around halal meat. So in 2004, they banned the hijab in high schools. And in 2010, they banned the niqab. So it was like, the buzzing with these kind of things in the media and politics. And because I studied chemistry before that, I've noticed in my university a group of young Muslims who were a small organization trying to help students revise their exams and handing out food for students who could not afford to eat. And I was really amazed how in the middle of all these controversies, they were still doing their job and helping everyone, and nobody would talk about them. So my mission was to show this aspect of Muslims in France that nobody would talk about. You have young Muslims who would use their faith as a motivation to improve the society, improve the neighborhood, help others. Because, it's been since 9/11, it's all about, Muslims in violence, Muslims in terrorism, Muslims in poverty, Muslims in immigration. And I wanted to show these stories that nobody talks about. So when I moved to the UK, I also realized that there is actually something a bit more worrying in the sense that lots of Muslims here in the UK, and it happens everywhere in Europe, in the US, have also kind of embraced this narrative, which is very much against themselves in the sense that, there is, I don't know if you're familiar with the Prevent program, for example, where it allowed people to denounce Muslims they would perceive to be at risk of being extremists. And so you've got people who would use, Muslims who would use this program to denounce, I would say, competitor because they have a competing business or people they didn't like, and took advantage of the system like that. And also try, to assimilate in a way that they would appear more French than the French, more British than the British, and being very, very vocal against immigration, against Muslims. In France, for example, you have a lot of politicians who are from North African descent and who would be the most vocal in parliament to ban the hijab, ban religious signs, and so on, because this is an inferiority complex they have.
So North Africa, that's where more of the Muslims are, right?
In France, yeah, most of the demographics are North Africans, then West Africans, and then you have also some other people from, let's say, Turkey, the Middle East, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and so on.
That's crazy. So, okay, so what you're saying is the African people who come from majority Muslim place, right? They speak against wearing the hijab and those kinds of things.
Yeah. So you have people like that. It's not. It's still more the exception than the rule. But you've got people like that. And here also in the UK, you may this is something we're witnessing nowadays, where you may have read the news lately, where you have people whose parents were immigrants from South Asia or Kenya or Africa, and who would be very vocal against immigration, meaning that in saying that multiculturalism in Britain has failed, while these people are the product of multiculturalism. It doesn't make any sense logically. But this is again, lots of these narratives are here to please a certain part of the society, to gather votes, to gather support. So yeah, again, this is very complex and a bit messed up.
So this is slightly unrelated. What do you know about so you know how people say, oh, Polish people steal jobs, Polish people are job stealers. You've heard that before, right?
Oh yeah.
Do you know why exactly that's said? Because all I know from my family is that Polish people get jobs and they are good at it or something. Like, I don't know, like, why do they say this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think it's not specifically directed as Polish people as like a nation or a culture, because if you look at history, this is something people have said with every single wave of immigration. In France, it was the same against the Italians, the Portuguese, and in Poland, people sometimes would say the same about the Romanians, about the Gypsies, or even about the Ukrainians. Yeah, my parents would say, even though we have family in Ukraine, they would say, oh, Ukrainians, they are a completely different culture. They're like barbaric. They have really bad manners. But yeah, and if you look back at our history, a part of Ukraine was part of Poland, and Ukrainians have so many genetic similarities to Polish people because it's been mixing for centuries. But still, this is what political divisions make. It pits people against each other for no logical reason, and this is how you get.
So yeah, I think I'm 1/16 Ukrainian. I think my granddad was half Ukrainian, so that's interesting facts for you. But yeah, I did witness I did know a lot of Ukrainians when I was in Poland. And they actually seemed fine, you know, they're just people, but I don't speak their language, you know, so, yeah, so this, job stealing thing, is it just because there's a higher population, same amount of jobs, they get the jobs so that there's more unemployment in the natives? Is that the basic gist of it?
This is what they think. While, you know, if you look at the statistics, this is absolutely untrue. It's just, you know, because after Poland got into the European Union, it happened that there was an influx of Polish people into the UK. And you see, you know, all these people seeing, you know, Polish workers, polskie sklepy, and everything. You know, people start to panic. But, you know, it was the very same thing, the same reaction they had back in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s when they saw South Asians coming into their towns and setting up, you know, the cash and carry shops, kebab shops, and so on. So it's directed at anything people perceive as foreign. And if you look, it's the same arguments. They steal our jobs. They're smelly. They have a very different culture. You know, like the list is endless.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, they open kebab shops, for example, right? And now kebabs are like a staple of British food. Like, I see kebabs everywhere. British people love the kebab. But I don't know if the same will happen with pierogi or kapusta or the other questionable Polish foods. All right, so could you tell me more about your Polish Muslims documentary and like what encouraged you to make it and how you made it and that?
So I embraced Islam in 2008 and I shot this documentary in 2012. So what happened is that since forever, because we have family in Poland, with my parents, we would go back to Poland almost every summer to visit family. The thing is, after 2008, so I embraced Islam, and so we were about to visit my grandma, who was alive at the time. And this is where I realized, no, hold on a second, this is different, because now I would need to figure out where I'm going to pray Juma, where I'm going to find halal meat, how I'm going to eat there. And so I just, you know, did what anyone would do, is just Google Islam in Poland or Muslims in Poland. And this is when I found out that there was Muslim families who have been settled in Poland since the 14th century. And it completely blew my mind because even me as a Polish descent, I didn't know that. And I was completely amazed to find that there was even mosques in the north of the country which were like 300, 400 years old, built out of wood, just like the Orthodox churches you see in this part of the country. So I decided to fundraise a little bit, buy some equipment, and to make a film out of it, because I wanted people to see that despite all what the media say, that, you know, Islam is not part of Europe or whatever, you actually have this European country where you have a Muslim population settled since the 14th century, and that's huge. So this is, I think, the main thing that decided me to, because if not me, I was wondering who's gonna make that film.
That's really interesting. Could you tell me about those 300-year-old mosques? Like, where are they? I want to actually Google them.
So they're in the district of, they're near Białystok. So it's there's one village called Bohoniki and one village called Kruszyniany. So
I see Bohoniki mosque. I see that. So is it like still open? Are people still praying there?
Yeah, they still do. Even when I went there, so, you know, it's a kind of a sad story, because of communism, the Tatars had to hide their religiosity, and the mosque would be open only, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 14 times a year. So once a month for Juma and twice for Eid. And people had to adopt non-Muslim names. For example, if you were called Ali, you would call yourself Alexander. But still, you know, they were still very open every day, because you have Polish people visiting them to know about, you know, Polish history and learning about the Tatar culture and so on. But the community itself would not use them that often. But it's only, I think, in the recent years that we have the younger generations of Tatars who have reconnected with their faith and have started to practice, I would say, more regularly, and leading to, I would say, a revival of the culture and the religion in these areas.
That's really cool. So I was wondering, just a bit ago when you were talking about France, you made this documentary about Poland. Why not a documentary about France? Is it just not as interesting?
It is, but you already have lots of content produced about France, Muslims in France, by Muslims living in France themselves. So you have lots of talented people already doing lots of stuff about it. It's just maybe, you know, not all of it is translated into English, and that might be the main challenge. But you already have lots of things being done by French Muslims about France, and it's just about, you know, maybe expanding our area of research. While in Poland, I remember looking on the internet, there was no video, almost no information done about it.
About the Poland thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good that clearly doing things that no one else has done really does work. Let's talk about struggles of reversion. Like, what struggles have you faced only because you're Muslim?
Well, I think the obvious thing is with the family. My mom was really unhappy with me embracing Islam, and not because she knew anything about the religion, but, you know, my parents, they conflate Catholicism with Polish culture, so they thought that me embracing Islam would be me turning my back on my Polish heritage. And while, you know, I had to explain to my mom, look, you know, I'm not turning my back. I'm just doing a software update, this to say, because you don't like cancel everything you've been taught. You know, the stories of the prophets, they're very much similar and so on. You believe in Jesus, in Mary. They just have, you know, the Quran just, you know, clarifies a lot of confusions that has been brought by the previous texts. But, you know, because my mom is just very attached to anything to do with Polish culture, so for her it was as if she was losing her son. And I had to work very hard to make her understand that it's not the case. So that was the main issue. My dad was kind of okay. But, you know, getting some distance from old friends, because, again, you know, they don't really understand what's happening. But I think the biggest shock was in the UK, but surprisingly, it didn't come from non-Muslims, but as I mentioned, it came from Muslims, the main challenges as a revert.
From Muslims. So could you talk more about that?
Yeah, so the thing is, I was very naive at the time. Again, I was very young, so to me, you know, my natural intuition was try to work within the Muslim community, that's to say. Even though I realized with time there is no such thing as a community in the UK, but try, you know, to stick to the charity sector or Muslim media in this kind of things, and where I noticed that I was just for some reason different. One example I quote is, in France, when I was Muslim, I would get invited for iftar during Ramadan every single night by a different person. To the extent, you know, I had to decline some invitations because it was too much, really. But I really liked it because I really like socializing. But in the UK, so my first jobs was for a Muslim charity. All my colleagues were Muslim. Ramadan comes, no one invites me. And I was really wondering, that's really strange because that was unthinkable in France. And I knew, you know, people who were Muslims outside of work before, who were acquaintances, but still, you know, I felt really puzzled. Why is that people like, is it like they don't care about each other, or what's happening there? And then further down the line, as I mentioned earlier, you know, when trying to get married, trying to find jobs, the fact that people had issues not only with my cultural background, but once I was rejected from a job because they said that me praying 5 times a day was too much. Like, you call yourself a Muslim charity, how is it possible? It doesn't make sense. I had comments about my beard being too long. I mean, this kind of nonsense, really. And this is when I realized that people here have a strange culture, which,
wait.
doesn't...
So, to be clear, Muslim charity said that praying 5 times a day and having a long beard is not bad, or am I understanding wrong?
No, they told me that, me praying 5 times a day was too intense for them. Because Muslims. The guys, the profile, you know, because I had also a look, you know, who did they hire instead of me, and like who these like women got married to. It's always, you know, a very similar profile, you know, people who are, you know, clean, almost clean shaved, who do not care about religion, who are very loud, arrogant, who have, you know, some charisma, but, you know, they don't have necessarily the experience or the skills for the job, but, you know, they have the charisma. But, you know, this is not something exclusive to the Muslim charity sector. You have lots of, you know, this is also how it works in the workplace in general. People sadly attach more importance to your charisma, your confidence, rather than your skills, your expertise expertise or your qualifications.
That's absolutely crazy that you'd get that from Muslims. In my experience, this might be because I'm young, or it might be because I'm a revert, or it might be because times have changed. I experience a lot of warmth from, Muslims. Like, I was even invited to a dinner on Eid from my neighbor, and it was delicious, by the way. But like I completely cannot relate, but there's definitely a component of how old you are, because if you're your age, probably a bit less lenient than me, right? Because I'm young.
Yeah, I really hope that it is age, because a lot of the people who I know who are either my age or older share very similar experiences, sadly. But I really want to hope that people from younger generations are able to go past, these kind of cultural norms and expectations. I also think, it's also a north-south thing, because I was always around London or the south of England, and I know that people in general have a different culture from the north of England, where they are known to be a bit more welcoming and warm. So I'm aware that it is maybe that. The contrast was very shocking to me, because in France, I had a very similar experience to yours. Like the 5 first years of me being Muslim in France, I had a family outside of my blood family. This is how strong our ties were. It was just fantastic. The hospitality, the support with each other. It just, changed from like 1 to 0 when I came to the UK. So I really hope that things are changing. And I definitely know that people from younger generations, they are getting a bit more open, because when I'm speaking, to people who embraced Islam 30 years ago and who are now in their 60s or their 50s, they tell me that, they had it even worse than me here in the UK, because it was not even like possible, almost impossible, to marry someone who was, let's say, South Asian, because of the cultural expectation of the parents. And now it's becoming a bit more accepted, still a bit difficult. But yeah, so I really hope that with time things are going to change.
I actually think this might have something to do with the fact that obviously a lot of Muslims that are in the UK that aren't reverts, they were here because their parents moved here, right? In France, are the Muslims there reverts, or are they like Muslims that came from a different place?
Yeah, most Muslims in France have a similar history to those in Britain, in the sense that their parents came from North Africa, West Africa, anywhere between the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. So their kids were born in France. And most of the people were coming from very financially and socially challenged backgrounds. Their parents would work as construction workers, jobs very low on the social economic scale. And it's only with the people from my generation and onwards that you start seeing Muslims working in, let's say, the banking sector, in like huge companies, in the tech sector, and so on and so on. But I think there's many differences in the sense that in France, society is a bit less divided according to class, where here in the UK, I understand it's very, if you're a working class person, social mobility can be very, very difficult unless you go to Oxford and Cambridge and onwards. While in France, first of all, university is almost free. So anyone can have like a very easy access to education. And I understand that it's a bit more easy to find jobs according to your skills and your expertise. While in the UK, in some companies and some industries, it's better for you to have in the first place a similar culture, a similar socioeconomic status, and know someone inside of the company to get yourself hired. So again, the society works differently in this country, and I guess this could explain some differences as well.
I was thinking that it might have something to do with the fact that, in general, from what I've seen and from what I've heard, Muslims in the UK are slightly less practicing, like, for example, if I see a shop, right, I could go there, they're Muslims, right? I say assalamu alaikum, they say wa alaikum salam. But they're selling alcohol and cigarettes and bongs and those kinds of things, right? And then my mum also told me, my mum has known a bunch of Muslims, and she told me that I'm the most practicing Muslim she's ever met, right? Because she's known ones that drink and, don't fast and that. So it could maybe have something to do with the fact that maybe wherever you were in France, there were just more practicing Muslims,
It's a possibility. Yeah, it's a possibility. But, I argue that I'm not sure it has to do with the practice of the religion that much, or, people's culture, because, one could argue that there are non-Muslims who can be as welcoming and supportive as one of the best people you can meet, but they don't believe in anything. It's just because they have been raised in a certain way and they have a certain culture. So I'm not sure it's entirely linked to religiosity. And, on the opposite, on the flip side, you've got people who, they do their 5 prayer, they may have very long beards, or wear the hijab, or, fast every single day during Ramadan, and plus the extra one throughout the year. But they also can be very horrible people. One thing when I realized that is with my ex-wife when I was married in France. So I married someone who was super, super practicing, wearing the hijab, praying her fives, even some extra prayer like Qiyam during the night, Tahajjud. She would fast on Mondays and Thursdays, like super, super practicing. But I was in an abusive marriage. She would treat me really horribly. It was physical, it was verbal, it was emotional. And eventually she fell in love with someone else. It taught me that there's a difference between, the ritual aspect of Islam and people's character and culture. Everyone has issues, and it's not because someone is super religious that they're going to be a good person, and vice versa.
That's interesting. I never thought of that, because I just thought, if you're a good Muslim, then that probably means you're good across the board, right? So good character, but
I did the same mistake.
Yeah, that's crazy then. That's crazy. So what are some tips you might give people? So let's say someone reverted 1 month ago. What are some things you would like them to know about, or what are some things like some actionable advice?
Yeah, the first thing is to bounce on what I was saying is know the difference between Islam and Muslims, and not to look at an example in other people's behavior. I would say the first thing is to seek your own knowledge. And this can be by, reading the sources, the Quran, the Hadith, but know that there's also, different interpretations of the Quran, the tafsirs. There is the context of the revelation for each verse of the Quran. There is the life of the Prophet, the Sirah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so all these texts where the answers are. And of course, because not everyone has the time to study all these texts and look online about the sources. Again, one good advice I got is not to follow any scholar in particular, but use the scholars, because everyone has different opinions. I think one of the beauty of Islam as a religion and a tradition is that scholars have different opinions, but they are here for us to consult, because they've done the work. But they came to different conclusions. But if you have a question, I would say look at the text, look at what the scholars say, and make your own judgment. Because for example, some school of thoughts prohibits to eat shrimps, while in the Quran it was said that everything that comes from the sea is halal. But people have different ways of interpreting different things. Again, so I think it's very important to have this relationship as a Muslim with the text, the original source, and also consult scholars and scholarly opinions to make one's opinion. So that's knowledge first priority. Then the second thing I would say is do not expect a community to come to you, but try to build your own community, in the sense that some people might be like in your situation where they are very, very lucky to have supportive and welcoming people around you. But I know many people who weren't that lucky. And one thing is you realize, especially if you travel, is that there's different people everywhere, and not everywhere is a place where you can root yourself. So it's all about, trying to find the good people around you and stick to them and keep them very, really closely. And if you see anything harmful, is be able to set yourself some boundaries and say, what you're saying is a bit toxic. It's not nurturing me at all. It's gonna harm me in the long term. So be able to say no. And I think this is also one big lesson I've learned through my journey. That if we see something which is not right, it's okay to say no to it and stick with the good things. So knowledge, people, and also I know another practical advice is try to read and meet as many different people as possible, read as many books as possible, and also travel, but for the sake of trying to get a different perspective. There's one risk we have, especially since we think we have access to the whole world from our screens, but it's a bit of an illusion, because nothing beats meeting people face to face. Nothing beats traveling to a country and meeting people and conversing with them, because it was so important in my journey, because it allowed me to see that you've got people who think in a very different manner. Even though, we are Muslim by name because we believe in the same things, we may have very different opinions on whether it is a society or the existential questions like our role in society, our role on earth. And it helps to know, even meeting people who have opposing opinions to you. Like, because I'm a researcher, I met, for example, Muslims who are, anti-Palestine, Muslims who are, have these kind of very unusual opinions. But it helps to understand, how do these people think? How do they come to these conclusions? Because either, it can comfort you in what you think already, or you can know where you stand. And I think, as a formative experience, it's very, very important.
So I want to add something to your second point, because my viewers know about self-improvement, right? And one thing that Hamza, the guy behind it all, it says is that if you have toxic friends or friends that are, not good for you. So for example, if you have any Islamophobic friends or friends you just don't want to be friends with, being Muslim is actually quite it's like a life hack, right? Because if you just go to the people who that are Muslim, right? Maybe there's 3 people who are Muslims at your school. Making friends with them is actually quite easy, because they welcome you with open arms. Some of them even would like pull you in and say, come to the mosque with me, come to this with me, So becoming friends with them is like a life hack, because once you're friends with them, cutting off the people that you don't want to be friends with is a lot easier, because you have someone as a replacement, One thing that I struggled with a lot when I was first reverting to Islam and when I was first getting into self-improvement was getting rid of toxic friends, because my 2 options were either I stick with them or I'm lonely, and I didn't want to be lonely. At the time I didn't think, okay, maybe I'll speak to the Muslims that I know. I literally have a neighbor that's Muslim and like 2 people at school, but for some reason I just didn't speak to them. But I think that if I did, I would be very practicing a lot sooner, and I think that's one thing that I could have done better. So anyone watching, if you know any Muslims and you haven't told them that you're considering Islam or that you're reverting, please do, because it will have huge amounts of impact. Well, I just want to ask, are you trying to get out of teaching and get into YouTube?
No. YouTube, my intention is to keep this channel unmonetized. I don't want to make money out of social media, because this is first not something I want. This is also, I know it can be a trap. I don't want to have strings attached, because I know that I'll have to, at some point, to tweak my content to bring a larger audience, get sponsorships and stuff, and I want to stay independent. While, alhamdulillah, I'm very lucky that I've got a stable job and I run 2 businesses on the side. So I don't need YouTube as a source of income. And this is, really something I want to use as a tool, meaning that I just know that not everyone has the time to read books and articles produced in universities and stuff. And my intention was, how do I convey these important findings, these important ideas in a digestible manner to people who only have the time to go on YouTube, let's say. So this is why most of my content is, trying to short versions of what I actually write about and what I publish, but in a manner which is, useful for people, because that's my intention. I want people to have the tools, the vocabulary, the concepts, to know how to navigate society and not to make the same mistakes I made. So this is why there's a lot of also my personal journey, which I have analyzed with, in my research to understand, why did I experience these misadventures? Why did I not know? So people can hopefully be better at life. But no, it's I want to keep it unmonetized, and my intention is I have a certain number of videos I want to make, and once it's done, and then I'll stop, because I have some other priorities in life.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's really cool. So I see that you're uploading quite regularly nowadays. How are you finding the time for that?
When it comes to solo videos, it's rather simple. I just, have an idea. I write it down because I already have all the theory, all the data, everything I need to find. So I just do the recording and edit it and upload it. That's quite easy because I don't need to do the research. I've already done it. One thing I want to do is more contemplative content, which is a bit more, film-like, which is a bit more slow and a bit more in depth with actors. And I want to also to do some interviews, some podcasts of the amazing people I have met in my journey. But again, this is this is very, very easy because I've been doing this for 15 years, meeting people, interviewing them, writing a script or questions, and then editing. It's automatic for me, so that's not a big deal.
So I was just thinking now, so if you got somehow 100,000 subscribers, right, would you not maybe try to use it as some kind of leverage, like, oh, look at this side business I've got, or, at least like open a memberships thing, non-disruptive, just like have the join button there, because you can make a good amount of money without really needing to push it into people's faces or to, make that your main thing. Like, I don't think there is a way that you could make money from this without needing to change your content,
Then, in my journey, especially as a business owner, I've learned that I believe in organic growth, meaning that I'll think about these questions once the situation happens. I'm not gonna plan to, do an online course for, in the case I get 100K subscribers and stuff. If it comes to a point where I have to, for example, do an online course, it will be because there will be a demand for it. So this is why I'm I'm under 5,000 at the moment. I'm not even sure I'll ever reach 10K, to be honest. So my first intention is, first of all, use all this audience to showcase people who I have met in my research who do not have and will never have access to such a platform, because what they're doing is just not like cool or Instagrammable, or it's not trendy. So this is my very first intention. If this journey brings me further down the line, and if by some miracle I get to 100K or something like that, then I'll see how it goes. But I really believe in organic relationships in business. So what the most solid things I have at the moment is with the research industry. It is with the people who I know personally who need filmmaking works, and with people who with my car detailing business. This is people I know and trust personally, and who I know are gonna get me work from word of mouth. So this is roughly where my position with when it comes to marketing, audience, and stuff.
So I genuinely think this. I was looking through your channel and I think, if you just do there are some things you could change, like your titles and maybe tags. You literally have the potential to get 100K subscribers. Like, I definitely think so. And I'm not just like, trying to flatter you or anything. I'm being serious.
Yeah. So one of my strategies, because I still want, my goal is try to get to 10K before I can release some podcast I'm recording. My goal is, one idea I have is try to do some like reaction videos, which are more analysis, just like the style of the Mohammed hijab video I did, where I make people believe I'm gonna hit on them or whatever, but actually I analyze what is this person doing, what does it mean, why is it important, or this kind of stuff, which people responded quite well. And doing this about either popular topics or popular figures, maybe celebrities, I don't know, and see how it goes. Because to be honest, I think that's one of the easiest thing I can do, and which people respond. It's not really the thing I want to do, but I know this is something that can bring me a bit more subscribers. But I don't know, do you have any other ideas? What could work?
Do I have any tips for what could work for your channel? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because you watched you had an overview of the channel, so you said you see potential. But for example, what is the content you think would be interesting for me to produce?
So, in terms of content, I think your content is great. I just think just to increase your engagement by a few percent, maybe shorter titles. Shorter titles work a lot better because it's a lot more eye-catching. For some reason, it just is.
Yeah.
I'll just look at this. Tags, video tags. You don't have many, and you can have up to 500 characters. So I'd say,
okay.
Just put as many relevant words as possible. Maybe even put some trendy words. So, for example, for most of my videos, I put Hamza. He's the self-improvement guy.
That's clever.
Yeah, it's what a lot of people do. Like, lots of people just put Mr. Beast in all of their videos, But of course, things that are also relevant. So, and one of your tags is Islamophobia. You could put also Islamophobes, Islam racism, just as many search terms as you can, and then it'll just boost your video just a little bit more. I'll try to think of one more thing for you. Obviously, your Polish documentary did really well because nobody else has done that, right? So someone sees that, they're like, I've never seen that before, I've never known of that before, right? So just try to find things that no one knows about but would definitely be interesting, you know? Or here's the truth about Muhammad hijab. It looks like you're gonna you know, hate on him, but obviously, you know, so yeah, those are my few things for you. One more thing, your niche, right? You want one, maybe two niches that are like specific, because your camera video, sure, it got 11k views, but how many of those people are gonna care about, you know, the France banning Muslims or whatever, you know? So
yeah, so a lot of my early content was experimental because I was just, you know, trying out what works, what doesn't.
Yeah, that
so
works.
So if you find something really random, that's normal.
Yes, yeah, it's good that you're doing experimental stuff. Like that's actually how I started my channel. Like at first I was just doing general self-improvement. Then I made a video about self-improvement and Islam, and then I realized during researching, I thought nobody else is doing this, so I'm just gonna double down. Fast forward a few months, and somehow I've got almost 11k subs, alhamdulillah. So if I'm not mistaken, I think that was most of what we were going to talk about, you know. We did stray a lot from it and just to talking about general Islamic stuff, but that's cool. Do you have anything that we might want to add?
Nothing I can think of immediately, but I think we've covered a lot actually.
Yeah, we have. It was very cool. I have to say, you're a very intellectual guy. I think it's gonna...
full-time job.
Pardon?
I have no choice. That's my full-time job. I have no choice.
Yeah, because you're a doctor, obviously. So I think when I show this to my dad, I'm gonna say, look at this smart guy. He's Polish and Muslim. He's gonna be quite proud. Could we do like maybe a summary for the outro, like actionable tips?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go for it.
Throw me some things that we spoke about, and I'll talk about them in the outro.
We spoke about
actionable tips.
So I mentioned looking for knowledge. I mentioned
look for community or try to build one.
Build your own community. You know, filter out the people, filter out the toxic one, keep the good ones with you. Meeting different kinds of people, traveling a bit, and to build your critical thinking skills. And that's.
Could you expand on building critical thinking skills? Like what exactly do you mean by that?
I mean being open to understanding different perspectives. And this is understanding that people may have different, divergent opinions you might be opposed to. But the key in life is to understand how do these people think? How do they come to these conclusions? How do they come to have these opinions? And it allows you either to know where you stand or comfort your position. So I think, to put it simply, exercise your mind with meeting different contexts and different perspectives, and just like play with your brain, so to reinforce your cognition, let's say, and understanding of the society and yourself.
Also, one thing I mentioned was if you have Muslims who you know, reach out to them and try to get closer with them, try to become friends, and then maybe try to form some kind of community, and then try to distance yourself from toxic people by being closer to them than the toxic people. Yeah, I also wanted to say one thing that I just thought about was to be a bit humble, right? Not have a big ego, because I see that some new Muslims do is that they believe in one thing, and then if someone, for example, Mawlid, for example, some people are reverts and they hear the scholars that they follow, they say, oh, Mawlid is bad. So then they go on Twitter and they're like, Mawlid's bad, blah, 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 blah. And they don't understand that maybe they might be wrong. For me, I'm in between, because I know if I had an opinion, then it would be like saying that I know, but I don't flip in though. Like I literally just spit out the opinion of Dr. Elmisri, because he spoke about it, and you know Dr. Elmisri, right? Yeah.
I know him, yeah.
Yeah, so he was talking about Mawlid, he was saying, and Maliki Click too. They were both saying, oh, Mawlid's fine, it's not a bid'ah. And then I spoke about it on Twitter, and I got counter arguments, and then I thought, I don't know anything about this. I'm literally just regurgitating information I've heard from people I like. So I think it's a good thing for people to understand that there's a good chance that you just don't know. You're just regurgitating something, you know?
And one question just came from the top of my mind because we're talking about reverts and also YouTube as a business. Have you come across some of these reverts who just know 1 week after the Shahada, there are offered like travels to Turkey, Egypt, Saudi, Pakistan, and are on like becoming like super big travel vloggers or influencers working with agencies, and this is something crazy. I don't know how it works, but
You know what? I only know of that because I saw your Insta converts video. But
yeah.
apart from that, hold on a second. What is this sacred calisthenics thing?
Oh, that's a joke.
That's pretty funny. The only thing that I thought, the first thing that came into my mind was Ibrahim X, but he's not. I don't think he applies. I think he's cool. So I don't know what you're talking about, to be honest.
Yeah, it's more, in the UK and the US, it's more the young white English or American dude or girl who this is why I was wondering if by any chance any agency offered you a deal, oh, we offered you sponsor Umrah, all expenses included, and for us to do a review or something like that, because a lot of countries are looking for improving their tourism industry, and they would seize the opportunity of seeing young people who are embracing Islam, who are more or less active on social media to promote the country or brands or anything. Because to be honest, I don't know how it works, but I would love if someone offers me like a sponsored Umrah,
Yeah,
because
me too.
with the cost of the Umrah these days, man.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope that this is a real thing because I would love to, go to the Hajj, and that would be flipping cool. I just need like a few more thousand subscribers, and then inshallah that'll happen. Homeless to homeowner. What was that? Is that your story?
Yeah, that's a story. It's not related very much to Islam. It's more, my personal struggles in the UK because, long story short, after my divorce, the charity I was working for lost their funding, so I got jobless. And then because I couldn't pay the rent, I found myself homeless. And this is the story how I recovered from being homeless for 2 years to now being happily married and in a home that I can call mine.
So like sleeping in a sleeping bag homeless.
Almost. I was about to, pitch my tent somewhere outside of London, but I managed to find a house in South London, which I squatted for 2 years.
Squatted?
And
What does squatted mean?
squatting, meaning that you find an abandoned house or building and you just stay in it.
That's crazy. So for 2 years you lived on your own.
Yeah.
What were you doing there?
Well, just surviving really, and
How were
feeding
you
on
money and food?
ravioli
Like
boxes. Huh?
how did you get money and food?
So I was able to get some freelance gigs because I still had my filming equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found a job in a restaurant in East London. Later, I found a job in Camden Market. And this is how I survived before I met the person who would become my wife, getting married and finding my job at uni.
That's absolutely crazy, bro. You got a very interesting story. But yeah, I think that's about it. Anything else you'd like to say for the end, or?
Can't think of anything. I think, yeah, we've covered a lot.
We have covered quite a lot, about almost an hour and a half. So that was Dr. William Barylo. Very cool guy. You saw, he's a very cool guy, very intelligent guy. I hope you all enjoyed this. I hope this was useful in some way. We did cover a bit of, practical advice. But yeah, may Allah bless you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.